This week's Words of the Master will be talking about the bread of life. The bread of life. We'll be looking at John chapter 6. John chapter 6, verses 22, all the way up till verse 71. I think what we'll do here is kind of just read through sections at a time and deal with them as we go. There's so many verses, instead of reading the whole thing and going back, I want to, I didn't see any comments over here. Dang, how the ring, yes, between the evenings.
We've had so many conversations about that. I remember, who's the guy from Connecticut?
Joe.
Yeah, he loved that conversation.
Oh yeah, Joe. Shout out to Joe. Okay.
He loved that conversation.
Let's go over to John chapter 6. John chapter 6, and let's read verses 22 down through 22 through 27.
On the next day, the crowd that was standing on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other boat there except that one into which his taught ones had entered, and that Yeshua had not entered the boat with his taught ones, but his taught ones went away alone. But other boats came from Kinnereth, near the place where they ate bread after the master had given thanks. Therefore, when the crowd saw that Yeshua was not there, nor his taught ones, they themselves also entered into the boats and came to Capernaum seeking Yeshua. And after found him on the other side of the sea, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Yeshua answered them and said, Truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were satisfied. Do not labor for the food that is perishing, but for the food that is remaining to everlasting life, which the Son of Adam shall give you, for the Father Elohim has set his seal on him.
All right, very good. So we see an interesting kind of developments. Yeshua, we've seen in the previous chapters, the previous situations where he's kind of going back and forth across the Sea of Galilee, going away from the people, escaping by boat. This time, they see the disciples leave. They see Yeshua, he wasn't there with the disciples, but somehow he disappeared. So they figured they catching on, so now they go across too, looking for him. Right? And they find him. He gets over there somehow, because remember, this is whenever he goes and walks on the water. It's interesting, the disciples, they boat across, and they get most of the way over there, and then Yeshua walks across. So I guess he just walked the whole way. He just walked the whole way because he didn't get on the boat with him.
Yeah, they're like, how you get over here?
Unless he had like a buoy. He got a little boat halfway and then left the boat. When I'm almost to him. I'm just leave the boat here and walk over and make it look. He probably walked the whole way. Anyway, the people followed him now, looking for him. And they're chasing after him. He's doing all these things. They're enamored with all of the things that he's doing. They chase him across the water. And Yeshua says to them, you seek me, not because of the miracles, but because you got fed. You got food in your bellies. And so the people, Yeshua, he feeds the people. He deals with their physical needs. He fed their flesh. And this particular group, this is what the majority of them are gravitating to him for, is the fact that, well, this is what he calls them out for doing anyway, as following after him because of the food. And then so he says to them, labor not. That word, look at that word there in verse 27. Verse 27, where it says, do not labor or labor not. That word, verse 27. Yeah, that one there, which is toil. To toil. As a task, occupation, to be engaged in or with, labor, to work, labor, to do business. He does not want for these people to give all of this effort, all of this laborious effort for this meat, what he calls meat, which if we look that word up, meat, there it is really dealing with the idea of food or eating, right? It's not literal meat like carne, right? But it's just food, right? Or the idea of eating. So he's saying, don't labor for this food or the idea of meat that perishes. Right? Don't be sitting up here worrying about, yeah, I did this thing for you. I made this miracle with these loaves of bread and these little bit of fishes, and all of this stuff is things that perish, that die, it rots, and it becomes no longer good. But he said, so don't labor for the stuff that perishes, but labor for, it don't say labor, but he's saying don't labor not for the meat which perishes, but for, for is hinting back to the idea of laboring for meat which endures unto everlasting life. Which is interesting because what kind of meat endures for everlasting life? Meat, things that you eat, it all perishes. None of it lasts forever.
It's not meant to last. It's meant to be for energy.
Yeah. And unless you got some freeze-dried food that could last 30 years, which I have, it's still not forever. It's a long time, but it's not forever. And so what kind of food could he be referring to? He's saying, you people don't labor after this stuff that perishes. Labor after this stuff that endures unto everlasting life. Oh, you don't got to worry about trying to figure out what kind of food that is, because he goes on and say, which the Son of Man shall give you. And so he's at the same time where he's kind of bringing correction to the people who have this emphasis that they're putting on the physicalness. They're sitting up here talking about, they're not talking about anything. They're following after him. And they're going after him because he's doing all of these things. But Yeshua is saying it's not the miracles that you're following. And we'll talk more about the fact that it's not the miracles that they're following necessarily, but the results kind of, because it was a miracle that he made all of that food come. But they were more interested with the fact that they was able to eat food. And Yeshua is trying to switch their emphasis and cause for them to be more spiritually minded. And so it's interesting that he says over in verse 27, dealing with the fact that the Son of Man will give you the food for everlasting life, and then at the end, for him hath Elohim the Father sealed. Him being the one who receives the food that's given. Those ones will get the seal. So let's look at that. Let's look at that word there, sealed, in verse 27, seal. 4972, which is a stamp with a signet or a private mark for security or preservation, literally or figuratively, by implication, to keep secret, to seal up. He's talking about this idea of these people who are going to receive this seal. And so it's interesting that, again, the people are dealing in the physical. Yeshua is pointing them towards the spiritual, and he brings up this idea of this seal, this stamp, for security and preservation. To me, I immediately think of the Ruach HaKodesh. The seal of the Spirit that we receive. And so he's basically saying to these people, don't worry about these physical things. Worry about these spiritual things. And in fact, when you do worry about these spiritual things that the Son of Man will give you, you will be sealed by the Father. And so it's interesting when we look at this, because Yeshua here is about to get into some heavy matters. He's about to get into some heavy matters, dealing with the focus of these people that are following him and the people that's already following him. Switching the focus from carnal to spiritual, and also accepting that which Yeshua is offering, accepting the things that Yeshua is offering, because he gives you kind of a little sneak peek over here. Don't worry about this perishable meat, worry about this spiritual meat, and by the way, I'm the one that's going to give you the spiritual meat.
You're going to take it up.
You're
going to take it up.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep on going. Let's read. Let's just read 28 and 29.
So they said to him,
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Let's talk some more about. Let's go over to. Oh yeah. My fault. Go ahead. 28 and 29. Sorry. Sure.
So they said to him, what shall we do to work with the works of Elohim? Yeshua answered and said to them, this is the work of Elohim, that you believe in him whom he sent.
Okay, very good. So now he's getting ready to get, and this is interesting when we look at this as this kind of unfolds, because Yeshua begins this whole conversation. It's a conversation that's a back and forth. He's saying something, they got something to say. He begins this whole thing. They have things to say that he's expounding on the things that he's saying, and it's interesting as we look and see how this thing unfolds. But the people now, their interest has been piqued. He talks about the fact that he wants for them to be able to receive this thing that he has to give. And then the people are like, what shall we do? What is it that we can do to receive this non-perishable food? And they ask about these works of Elohim. And so the people, they had an idea, but what Yeshua is presenting is not going to be what they think, right? And so when we look in verse 29, when he answers and he says to them this, he's about to tell them what is the work of Elohim. This is the work of Elohim, that you believe on him who he hath sent. Okay, so he's teaching them, he's talking to the people about faith. Okay, because in verse 29, where it says that you believe on him, that word there, hit on that word there in verse 29, believe, which is pistuo, which is to have faith. It is to entrust, especially one's spiritual well-being, to Messiah, to believe, to commit, to trust, or to put trust with. Okay, so he's asking for the people, he's telling them that you must believe on him whom he hath sent. Well, he didn't really say who he has sent is up until this point, but he's saying that this is the work of Elohim. Okay, so don't labor for perishing food, but labor for spiritual food. But he said that spiritual food is actually the work of Elohim. Let's go look at some things over here because we want to find out what is the work of Elohim. What's the work of Elohim?
Do they want to work it, or do they?
They want to work. They don't know what to. They want to figure out what to do.
I don't know if they want to do that.
They're used to doing things in order to receive something. You got to do something. So you got this thing. You ain't nobody giving out nothing for free. So you got this thing that I need for everlasting life. What I got to do for it? So let's look at Psalm 66 and 5. Psalm 66, verse 5.
Come and see the works of Elohim, awesome acts towards the sons of men.
Okay, so Psalm 66 and 5 talks about the works of Elohim, and it seems that the works of Elohim must be his miraculous wonders or his power. What's Ecclesiastes 11 and 5 say?
As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of Elohim who makes all.
The works of Elohim seem to be the miraculous wonders, the unknown things of Elohim. Is the works of Elohim. These are things that are not done by you and I, but that are done by the Most High, in fact. And so they're trying to figure out what to do, and he's saying there ain't really nothing for you to do. It's the works of Elohim. The works of Elohim bring about salvation. redemption. And so again, if we go back to John chapter 6 and verse 29, he said, this is the work of Elohim, what? That you believe in him whom he has sent. And so remember, now he's talking to the people, you're not following after me because of these miracles that I'm performing. You're not following after me because of the works of Elohim. You following after me because you got fooled. He's trying to point them to the thing that's supposed to be changing their minds about things. They're supposed to be able to look at the things that he's doing and know that he is who he says that he is. But they're confused because all they're thinking about is food for their bellies.
Physical stuff.
The physical stuff. All right, let's keep on going. Let's read verses 30 and 31. Oh, this is when the shift happens right here, and they're the ones that do it. But go ahead.
What chapter of John was that?
Chapter 6, John 6 and 30.
So they said to him, what sign then would you do so that we see and believe you? What would you do? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it has been written, he gave them bread out of the heaven to eat.
Okay, now they done did something. Now they done brought up manna. It's interesting that this thing that Yeshua is about to be talking about is really built on this thing that these people brought up. He's trying to show these people, first of all, that you need to not be thinking about so much of these physical things. But you should be looking and thinking about the spiritual things. Now, when we look, Yeshua was doing all kinds of miracles. All kinds of miracles. It was a miracle that he performed, really, that caused them to follow after them. But not for the miracle's sake, but for the food's sake. And so the question then becomes, what is really wrong with the majority of these people when they're looking at all of these things that Messiah is doing and they're not understanding who he is still? And so when we look at verse 31, where it says, our fathers did eat manna in the desert, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Now, the people, I think, are confused about who he is. Who's he? It's interesting because when we think about the works of Elohim, again, being these miraculous wonders, these people bring up the works of Elohim, which is manna. And they're connecting back to Moses. Yes. It was a miracle. It was also about provisions, but it's also prophetic, and it points us to Messiah, which Yeshua is about to bring out. But look at what he says. Look at what Yeshua says in verse 32 and 33.
Therefore Yeshua said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, Moshe did not give you the bread out of the heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread out of the heaven. For the bread of Elohim is he who comes down out of the heaven and gives life to the world.
He said, well, first of all, he said it already, but let's look at it right now where he says, verily, verily. He said, verily, verily. He keep on saying, verily, verily. When we look at this word over here, we go to Pull that up on in the Strongs there. Barely. That there points you back to a Hebrew word, amen, which is to be firm, surely, so be it. Something that is sure, something that is truth. And so Yeshua wants you to understand that he's about to say something real heavy and real serious and real true. Because he said verily, verily. Right? But then the thing that he says, Moses, because the people, they didn't say Moses' name. But Yeshua knows what the hearts of these people is thinking. They're carnal people. That's what started this whole thing anyway. And so the people said he gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Yeshua says Moses ain't gave them people nothing. Moses gave you not that bread from heaven. It didn't come from Moses. You know, this is something that you got to deal with when you talk to people about the law at times. You know, they talk about the law of Moses. The law of Moses. Well, you know, that's Moses' law. That's the Most High's law.
Yeah.
Moses just said it.
Yeah.
He just told you what the Most High said to say.
Like Moses came up with it.
Like it's his thing.
Like he sat there and wrote it. It's like.
Well, he did sit there and wrote it.
I mean, out of his mind.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The Most High would have told them himself, but they didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's right. That's their own fault. We got this whole issue with the law of Moses because of the people didn't even want to hear from the Most High. Please, Moses, it's too scary. Don't let us hear this voice anymore. You talk to him and then come back and tell us what he said. But when we look over here, Yeshua is correcting these people. He says Moses gave you not the bread from heaven. But they got some bread from heaven. But Moses didn't give it to you. But now he's switching it up a little bit. He's talking about them and he's talking about the old time and them simultaneously. Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of Elohim is he, the bread is he which came down from heaven. Now he done said something now. And gives life to the world.
First time he's admitting to who he is.
It's kind of, he's saying some things over here. He's saying some things. First of all, he's calling himself the true bread from heaven. It's funny that he said my Father, not our Father. But he's saying some things, right? He said, my Father's giving you the true bread from heaven, and for the bread of Elohim is he which comes down. Oh, wait. So he didn't say he was it yet. He said, Moses didn't give you no bread from heaven. My Father's giving you the bread from heaven, the true bread. The bread of Elohim is he which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Okay, so he didn't put himself in it yet. But we know what he about to. We know what we already know what he about to say. But he was up though, and then he came down. Like he said something right there. Whoever this is that he's talking about was up, and then he came down. Which is, he's saying a lot right here. But he wants for these people to understand that Moses didn't give the manna. Moses didn't give the manna. The manna was from heaven. And then now the Father now gives you this true bread that's from heaven, and this bread is everlasting life. Okay, let's look at 34 and 35.
Verse 34. So they said to him, Master, give us this bread always. And Yeshua said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not get hungry at all, and he who believes in me shall not get thirsty at all.
Okay. So the people like, all right, you know about this bread from heaven. It's kind of like what Moses gave out, but this stuff gives everlasting life. Let me get that. I need some of that. Where we get that from? And then so now Yeshua says to the people, I am the bread of life.
They think they want the bread.
They saying that they want the bread anyway. What is it? Because they probably think that he's going to pull that out of his satchel. Not that he's going to be like, I'm the bread of life. They probably thought he was going to pull it out like, here it go right here.
They all I mean, because you even think about manna, the people initially didn't even want that manna anymore.
They got tired of it, didn't they?
Tired of it, yes, like so.
Like we got to sit there and eat this stuff that tastes like coriander and honey. It's just so delicious. We got to sit there and we're forced to eat this thing.
They don't want the bread from heaven, no matter if it's something that they physically ingest or if it's in the side.
Out their mouth they want it.
They think they want it.
Let's go back in time. Go back to Exodus 16. Where might it say manna? Probably 16, maybe 30 something maybe. How many verses is in chapter 16?
36. 36 verses.
36 verses.
And the children, verse 35, and the children of Israel ate manna 40 years.
1635. Pull that up and let's look at the word manna.
You want to read it?
Well, we don't have to read the
Okay,
verse.
let's walk the
Yeah, read the verse. Yeah. What the verse says.
Exodus 16:35, and the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came to the inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan.
Okay, so Israel eats manna the whole time they're in the wilderness. The food that they eat in the wilderness is this manna, this bread from heaven that didn't come from Moses, that comes from the Most High. But what is it? What is it? What is it? Get it? Okay, it's Hebrews 44:78. Literally a whatness, so to speak. That is manna. It's a question. It's a question. Huh? What? Ma? What? What?
It's like, what is it?
Ma? That's what they're like. What is it?
Yeah.
It's this mysterious substance that somehow when they eat it, they're full. Miraculously, somehow on Shabbat, I could get enough on Friday and it lasts a whole day. It lasts me, I can get 2 days portion from 1 day's portion. It miraculously is preserved over over 2 days. When normally when I get it at the break of dawn, by the time the sun gets hot, it melts away and I can't even get any more. And so there's a short time period that it lasts as far as harvesting, and there's a short time period that lasts as far as me holding it, because it don't last until the next day. The stuff that I picked from the first day, it rots by the second day, except on the Shabbat. And so this bread from heaven, this unknown, mysterious thing that comes from heaven that preserves me, that keeps me from perishing. There are degrees of perishableness to it, but there's also degrees of preservation for it and for me. Right? It's this mysterious thing, this manna. And so Yeshua, and by the way, the people brought up manna, by the way. In their questions, they brought it up. And it just so happens that Yeshua kind of is manna. He's mysterious. What is he? Like, what is he talking about? He just was walking on water. He just raised this person from the dead. He just healed this leper. What is he? What is this guy? What? I thought that I knew who his mom and daddy was, but can't no regular guy be doing nothing like this. Like, what is he? Who is he? And then now he's saying that I'm the bread of life, and he that comes to me shall never hunger and never thirst. Just like the people ate the manna and then they didn't hunger or thirst. Well, they did thirst and then they had to get some water. But they could go a long time without hungering or thirsting with it.
It had all the essential nutrients that the body needed. That's all you need.
Crispy wheat.
Yeah. Tasty wheat.
Tasty wheat. Oh my goodness. So, what is he talking about over here? If you eat this bread, you're never going to be hungry. If you eat this manna, this bread of life that he is, you're never going to be thirsty. You're never going to be hungry, and you're never going to be thirsty. And so what we got to remember is that he's not talking about physical hunger and physical thirst.
I don't know. Think about it. The scripture about the righteous. Never seen the righteous begging for bread.
Yeah, they do say that. They say that all day. That's a Bible verse. But I think the point that Yeshua is trying to make here is to pull the people's mind away from the physical and move it into the spiritual, because of the fact that, first of all, what he's getting ready to say guarantees that it's not literal. Because, well, we'll see what he says, but when we look at what he's calling for the people to be able to do, is for them to no longer have this longing and wanting for spiritual awakening. Because of the separation that was caused between the Most High and humanity because of sin, it causes us to be separated spiritually from the source of life, the Most High. And so we have a desire to be spiritually fed. We're not connected to the life source. And so from that perspective, when we eat from the bread of life, we no longer have that absence within us. We're joined back to the Father. So from that perspective, we'll no longer hunger and thirst. Because we're connected back to the Father. We sit out here and we search for all of these things to help us to arrive at something that's never going to get us there, because the things that we search for are physical.
Yep.
But you're still going to get hungry. You're still going to want a sandwich. You're still going to want some water to drink. But he's not necessarily speaking about that. He's speaking about the connection that will be ignited, how you'll be reconnected to life and everlasting life, the source of life. And so this is the thing that he says over here when he's talking about this idea of never hunger and never thirsting if you believe on me.
Right.
I'm the bread of life. Believe on me. You'll never hunger. You'll never thirst.
All right. There was just a couple things here. It's just so awesome because I don't remember him. This is high frequency still, but I don't remember him high frequency telling people in mass, that he's the Messiah and he came from the Father. Other than when he spoke to the woman at the well and he's talking to her.
Yeah, he's having these
about-
little side conversations with you.
And when he talked to her, he talked about, she started talking to him about water. And he was talking to her about water and not being thirsty again. And she was like, "Oh, give me this water." And then, he said that he's basically the water. And then even with Nicodemus talking about the being born again. Nicodemus is like, "How am I supposed to go back into my mother's womb?"
Yeah.
Like, it's like these people,
They don't
he's
get
talking to them about
Not
these
get
spiritual things using these physical things that we go through. And it's like, they're just like not really grasping just the deepness of it all.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the whole premise of this whole thing that's going on here. The people want more of that fish and more of that bread. But he's not talking about those things. He's talking about things in the spirit. And so they start talking about manna, and he says to them, I'm the manna. All you gotta do is believe in me, and that I'm the manna, and then you'll never hunger, and you'll never thirst again. But yes, there's this thing where he was talking to these people, and he's showing them these things, and they're thinking about things from a physical perspective, and what he's talking about is spiritual. Here, read chapter 6 and 36.
John 6:36. But I said to you that you have seen me and still do not believe. Keep going.
Yeah, 37.
All that the Father gives me shall come to me, and the one who comes to me I shall by no means cast out.
Okay, so they're sitting up here talking about what do I got to do? What are the works of Elohim? What are these miracles? How can I take part in this thing that you're talking about that you have that you have to give? And he's saying, I'm sitting up here doing all these things. I already showed you the works of Elohim, but you don't believe. Let's go back. Read for us John 3 and 2. John 3 and 2.
John 3 verse 2. This one came to Yeshua by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim, for no one is able to do these signs you do if Elohim is not with him.
Nicodemus, this teacher, comes and talks to Yeshua in secret at night. And he's saying that you got to be from Elohim because of all of the stuff that you be doing. You're looking at the miracles, you're looking at all of these things that you're doing, you got to be from Elohim. Yeshua says here in chapter 6 and 36, all you people seen what I do. You should actually know, but you don't believe because of the disconnect, right? There's a small minority of people who are able to look and see that, oh, you must be from the Most High. But the majority of people, the masses, they're looking and they don't get it. And so when he says over here that you also seen me, you saw the works, the things that he's doing that bear witness, the things that he's doing, his works bear witness of who he is. His works bear witness that he really is the Son of Elohim. But the people in their carnality, they're not getting it. And so now he's making these connecting statements, and he's saying, this is the will of the Father which has sent me. Right? Before he talked about the fact that there's a bread that comes from heaven that gives life to the world. He said, I'm the bread. Now over here he's saying, I'm the one that the Father has sent, who's given all to me. And the ones that come to me will in no wise be cast out. The ones that believe, the ones that come, the ones that believe, the ones who eat the bread, they will not be cast out. They will have, he said before, they will have life. They will have everlasting life when they have this unperishable bread, this bread of life. All right, let's keep on going. Let's read down to
Back to 6.
back to 6 and 38 down to 40.
Because I have come down out of the heaven, not to do my own desire, but the desire of him who sent me. This is the desire of the Father who sent me, that all he has given me I should not lose of it, but should raise it in the last day. 40?
40.
And this is the desire of him who sent me, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him should possess everlasting life, and I shall raise him up in the last day.
Okay, very good. So, again, now he's connecting all these things. He's making sure that it's known. He's getting rid of all of the kind of, making sure there's no discrepancy, saying that he's the bread. He's the one that comes down from heaven. He's the one that comes from Elohim. He's saying, my Father sent me. He comes from the Father. He's saying a lot of these things to this people, and it must be a lot for them to be able to take in all of these things. But at the same time, just from like a logical perspective, when you look at all the things that he has been doing up until this point, it seems like kind of all of these things should kind of make sense. Because a regular guy ain't doing all of the things that he's doing. But again, he's trying to refocus the minds of the people and cause them to understand that there is a thing, a spiritual thing that's going on that he wants for these people to be able to hear and understand. And if they can, he said, everyone that sees the Son. That's interesting. Here, look at that word there in verse 40 where he says, everyone that sees the Son. That word there says to be a spectator, that is to discern. Figuratively, to experience, to behold, to consider, to look on, to perceive. It's interesting that that word kind of reminds us of the Hebrew word ra'ah, which is to see, which also deals with the idea of experiencing. And it also deals with the idea of perceiving. And so when we think about the idea of seeing the Son, it's not just about visually looking at him. It's about having the revelation of who he really is and being able to experience him for who he actually is in terms of this bread of life. When you think about the manna, you could look at the manna all day long, but you had to go out and gather it and eat it though, in order for it to do anything for you. You had to experience the manna. And so when we think about this idea of seeing the Son or even believing on him for that matter, like what does that entail? Believing in the Son. The way that he's talking about it in terms of this thing that's going to feed you and pacify your thirst forevermore, there has to be some idea, concept of experiencing him in some way so that you are able to realize the thing that Yeshua is offering you. And so it's interesting when we look at verse 40 over here when he says, when you see the Son, and he says all of these things, you see the Son and believe on him, you'll have everlasting life and I will raise him up. He's saying all these things. I'm going to raise you up. He said, I will raise you up in the last days. Is that a separate thing from the everlasting life? To have everlasting life and I'll raise you up in the last day? Or is that just kind of something that's incorporated in the everlasting life? Is he saying two things or is he saying one thing? I don't know, but I think the most powerful part of that is the fact that he said, I will raise you up in the last day. In fact, this is the part that messes the people up right here. Look at verses 40. Matter of fact, read 41 through 45.
Therefore the Yehudim were grumbling against him because he said, I am the bread which came down out of heaven. And they said, is this not Yeshua, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he says he has come down out of the heaven? Then Yeshua answered and said to them, do not grumble with one another. No one is able to come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. And I shall raise him up in the last day. It has been written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught by Yahweh.
Okay, very good. So he's not budging off of this idea of coming down, being sent from the Father.
Oh, I didn't finish it.
Oh,
Everyone then who has heard from the Father and learned comes to me. My bad. It broke it up.
yeah. Yeah, and so when we look at, first of all, Yeshua, first of all, the people, it says, are murmuring at him. Murmuring, they're like, you believe what he said? You believe what he's talking about? They're talking amongst each other, kind of.
Like they did Moses.
They did do Moses like that.
Anytime a message come through a person, it's always somebody that gotta say something about it.
To this day.
To this day.
What's that?
So it's like, if the Most High Self ain't saying it, then people, I mean, good luck, you know? It's always gonna be somebody's objection.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they're doing. And they're murmuring amongst themselves, and Yeshua's like, I hear you. Don't be murmuring about just amongst yourselves. But he's kind of one up in every statement that he makes. No man can come to me except the Father which have sent me draws him. And then, like I said before, I will raise him up in the last day. And it's interesting that he brings up where he says it is written in the prophets, they shall be taught of Elohim. So he's saying so many things over here. He said, I will raise you up. He brings up the scripture that talks about being taught of Elohim, but he's the one that's doing this teaching. So what's he saying? Is he saying I'm Elohim? If you're going to be taught of Elohim, I'm from Elohim. I'm the bread that came down from heaven. I was up and then I came down. And then he mentions in verse 45, it is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught of Elohim. What is he saying? He's making some pretty heavy statements in regards to who he is. And again, this really is kind of a thing that, you know, in times past, he does these things. Here, don't tell nobody what I did. I know I just raised you up from the dead, but don't tell nobody. Just keep it a secret. I know you used to be blind and you used to not be able to walk and you used to not be able to talk, but and everybody knows that you was all messed up like this, but don't tell nobody. But now he's talking to a group of people and saying, I came down from heaven. Just like manna came down from heaven. And just like manna, when you eat it, it sustains you and preserves you if you believe in me and treat me as if I am manna, you will have everlasting life. Oh, and the only reason why you're going to even believe me or come to me is because the Father in heaven is going to deal with you in your spirit first and change your mind and cause you to understand who I am. Open up your eyes to me.
And they literally are being taught by Elohim right then and there.
As it's happening.
They came up to him and said, rabbi to him at the very beginning of all of this. So now they learned it. They would open it.
I mean, the ones who have an ear to hear, they're going to hear it. But he's letting it be known that, again, these aren't physical, carnal things that he's talking about. But then look what he said. Look what he says in 46. Read verse 46 right there.
46. Not that anyone has seen the Father, except he who is from Elohim, he has seen the Father.
Oh my goodness. So you're gonna be taught of Elohim, but you're gonna be taught of Elohim by me teaching you, by Yeshua teaching you, he says. Then in 46, he's saying, no man ever seen the Father, but I seen him. I seen him, he said. And then, hold on, just go ahead and read 47 to 51.
Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me possesses everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread which comes down out of heaven, so that anyone might eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came down out of heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And indeed, the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world.
Wow. Okay, so it seems like every time he speaks, he's adding more to the situation. He's adding more every time he speaks. And from a carnal perspective, now again, we can take it back and think about the fact that he must be speaking spiritually, because he's not talking about cannibalism. He's not talking about, just take like a little knife and take a chunk out of my arm and eat some of this meat off of my body. Right?
I mean, that's unlawful from eating a human, but you're not supposed to eat a living animal that's still alive. You can't cut
There's so many
You
things.
can't cut an animal's leg off and eat the leg, and then the animal like looks
There's
around.
so many reasons why this is he's not literally talking about eating bread or flesh, or even as he says later, blood. Like he goes up every time. Further down he says, drink my blood, eat my flesh, and then I'll raise you up in the last day. But again, he's not speaking from a physical perspective. He's speaking of a spiritual perspective, and he wants for the people to have an understanding of who he is. He's of the Father, and there has to be like, think about what happens when you eat food. Like, you're absorbing what it is into yourself. You're taking all of the nutrients and all of the good things that food has to give. You're experiencing all of those things, and those things are working their way into your self and causing you to be able to live and move and give you strength.
Sustain your physical body.
Yes, and it's like you're gaining things that pertaineth unto life from the thing that you're ingesting. And so when he's talking about this idea of eating my flesh, eating me as bread, and later he says drinking my blood. Blood is what carries the life. Life is in the blood. Right? And so you're ingesting, you're taking the life that Yeshua has to offer to give, and taking that life inside of you. And then that life is sustaining your life. It's preserving your life. And so he's saying all of these things, and he's describing these spiritual things in a physical way, and the people, they're lost. They're totally lost. They don't know what is going on with all of this. Rightly so.
Yes.
Because it sounds weird. It sounds weird for someone to say, just drink my blood and eat my flesh. I don't know, did they have vampires back in those days? I don't know. When vampires came.
You have people doing, the Bible say nothing new under the sun, so you know it's people eating blood and doing weird stuff. So
There had to be though. There
Yeah.
had to be
some
something.
nation was eating blood. And
There
doing
had to
stuff.
be something like that
Yeah.
at that time.
You can find it. Yeah.
Where when the people looked at this, they just was totally offended by this.
Yeah.
And they couldn't even take it anymore.
I think the artists, it's like when you look at it, like even today, information, like the language is how we transfer information to one another. And so, however the language, whatever concepts exist in the language, that's what you got to use. And so, like even today, when we read these things, now we can compare, contrast, and go in. But like, I guess spiritual aspects, like, cause me, when I'm looking at it is, you got two bodies. You got a spiritual body, you got your physical body. He's clearly talking about the spiritual. And the spiritual don't eat food, like physical food.
Yeah. Right.
But he's like, look, you gotta cause if you stop eating, you gonna die. Like physical food. So you gotta feed your physical body. Food is a natural occurring thing. The Most High, it's always gonna be food. As long as the sun come out, it rains, there's dirt, you can always have food. That's never gonna stop. But wisdom of how you operate, the knowledge of how to deal with, how to get the food, and all these other things. If you can't get it, you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna search it, people search in different places and try all these different things that either leads to death, a dead end, heartache, pain, suffering. And he's just trying to show them, look, you chasing your belly, because that he's relating it back to the physical. And it's like, no, it's internal. I think that's the biggest, clearly the biggest disconnect that they don't get.
Yeah.
And most people today don't get.
Yeah. And again, that's where he began at. And he's trying to lead the people away from even though he's just the way that he's describing it, it must be from a physical standpoint, because this is where we are. We're in a physical existence. This is the way we understand things. We understand things from a physical perspective, but he's giving it to us from a physical perspective just so we could comprehend the concept that he's bringing forward, that we need to be able to be connected from a spiritual standpoint, and this is the way that it is done, through the thing that he has to offer, which is partaking of him, the bread of life. And he's talking to them and relating it back to the manna, which is this mysterious thing from heaven that he is. And so when we look at what he has to say in regards to all these things about eating his flesh, drinking his blood. Here, read 55 and 56. Matter of fact, 55 through 58.
It says, for my flesh is truly food and my blood is truly drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me and I in him, as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father. So he who feeds on me shall live because of me. This is the bread which came down out of the heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and died. He who eats this bread shall live forever. He said this in a congregation teaching in Capernaum.
Okay, very good. So he's causing you to think about the idea of bread from heaven, manna. He is the bread from heaven. He in the speech, he's talking about the flesh and the blood. But he also says this is not like the bread that they ate and died, because they ate a physical thing. He obviously can't be talking about a physical thing, because that would be contradictory to Torah itself, when he's the living Torah. And so it has, again, everything to do with a spiritual understanding. And even in 56, we're talking about the idea of dwelling in me and I in him. This, when we think about the idea again of, taking in the things that Yeshua has to offer, him being this living manifestation of the character of the Most High. We think about what he said at the beginning in terms of those that believe will have the seal of the Most High put on them. We think about what he will say later on in terms of the Spirit. It becomes necessary for the way that this is realized is through the receiving of the Ruach HaKodesh, which comes and lives and dwells on the inside. And so when we believe, when we perceive who the Master Yeshua is, when we understand who he is, what he is, that he is the bread from heaven, that the thing that he has to offer us is everlasting life, when we accept that sacrifice that he will provide for us, and we take on that spirit that he makes available for us, it is the way that we ingest his goodness and his life substance, and that carries us forward to everlasting life. And so it's interesting when we look at this situation, the people leave after this, because they're never able to understand what he's saying from a spiritual perspective. They only see the physical part, and the crowds, they're like, man, I'm done with this guy. He's off of his rocket. It says disciples, here, drop down to 66. Read 66 down to the bottom, 71.
From then on, many of his top ones withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. Yeshua therefore said to the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" Then Shimon Kepher answered him, "Master, to whom shall we go? You possess words of everlasting life, and we have believed, and we have known, and we know that you are Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim." Yeshua answered them, "Have I not chosen you, the 12, and one of you is the devil?" He was now speaking of Yehuda from Cherith, the son of Shimon, for he, one of the 12, was about to deliver him up.
Okay, very good. So we see that these words that Yeshua spoke, if you miss it, if you're looking at it from a physical perspective, you don't understand what he's talking about. And many of his disciples, they left and they didn't walk with him no more. They were done. Because carnally, these things are impossible, what he's saying. But spiritually, these are the things Peter understands. These are the things that lead to everlasting life. And even at this point, Peter, he don't understand. The only thing he do understand is that he's the son of the living Elohim. All of the intricacies, I don't really know what you talk about, but I know that you got the words that are about everlasting life. I don't know what you mean all the way exactly, but I feel like I'm gonna catch on if I just keep on.
The thing about it too, when Yeshua spoke, but you had to think.
Yeah.
He didn't cut it up into little digestible pieces and easy go down. You had to sit and think, but you had to meditate, and they had to come to you of what he meant.
Yeah.
It wasn't just easily given. You had to really want it to get it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's on purpose.
Yeah,
he does that on purpose.
It's a barrier to entry.
He wants it's just like any other thing. You have to really show that you really want this life. The people who was just kind of on the surface, they couldn't hang. But these ones, they was. And so, just kind of closing down here, understanding that, Yeshua wanted for these people, he's bringing these things forth, letting these people understand kind of for the first time, openly manifesting who it is that he is. Causing the people to think about, what it is that he is. The fact that he really is this manna. That he is this manna. He is this kind of mysterious being that has come to bring preservation and salvation for the people, to strengthen the people to go through the wilderness. Peter at the end, he's able to at least understand that part, that it's necessary to believe the things that he's saying, even if you don't fully understand the things that he's saying. And those things, they're true when you think about the kind of relationships that children have with their parents. They have to know that their parents aren't trying to do them harm, even though they can't sometimes understand what it is, the fullness of what it is that your parents are saying. You know that you're trying to move you forward in a positive direction, even though you don't know the ins and outs of things. Mm-hmm. And so Peter at this time, he's like, this is a hard thing that you're saying, but I don't know, where else am I supposed to go? Mm-hmm. Where else can I go? To whom shall we go? He says. There ain't nowhere else to be. I know I'm supposed to be with you, and I know that you're the son of the living Elohim. And as far as he's concerned, that's all that he needs to really work out within himself. And so, at this point for them, that's their reality at this time. For us, it's different. We're able to understand, and we learn over time that, Yeshua is in fact the son of Elohim. He's come for a specific purpose to redeem his people back to himself, he does that in a specific way in terms of his death, burial, and resurrection. And we're able to understand that when we partake in the goodness that he has to provide for us, we're able to make it through to the other side. And so it's necessary for us to have a enduring faith in the Messiah and what he's done for us, because he's only come to preserve us and to strengthen us and to cause us to be able to make it to the destination.
Yeah.
All right, so does anybody have any last thoughts, questions, or comments?
I think that a lot of people come to the Messiah when they have a physical issue, like hunger. In this case, it's hunger. They sought them out, or like sickness. You know, a lot of times somebody maybe get a cancer diagnosis or something, and then they really start seeking out Yeshua. But if it doesn't really involve like the physical thing that they're seeking out, if it doesn't ever get past that point to spiritual, if they do make it and get healed, a lot of times it's the very same people who sought out earnestly or are no longer with the Messiah after their healing or after they've gotten deliverance from something. It's because they never really translated that into belief all the way till the end, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can just see that these people, they were seeking them out for something to eat. And then he says, well, I can give you something that you're never going to hunger or thirst again. And then they just can't understand that. And then they're done. Right?
Yeah. Because he flipped. Whenever he says that part, he flips from physical
To the
to spiritual.
They're not interested.
And you know that if you're never able to make that flip, if you stay in carnality and you think that the only thing that he came to do was to appease your flesh, then you miss everything, because he didn't really come for none of that. Those things are kind of we need physical things. We need for our flesh to be maintained if we want to live as human beings.
That's easy.
That's just that's like the regular baseline things.
All human beings.
Yeah.
Everybody needs that. The wicked and the righteous need to live.
Yeah.
They need those basic things to live, but what about everlasting life? What about your eternal life?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be connected back to the Father, or are you going to be separated from him for eternity? He came back to restore the relationship between his creation and himself. And that's the point of the matter. And so when you're never able to make it past the physical understandings about things, you can't be sustained. And so with the example that you've given, even if you've experienced a miracle, if you never, if that, even with the miracles that Yeshua performs, he performs those things so that the people are able to believe in him and who he is. But if you're never able to make it to that point, then, you missed the point. And so, we have to understand that the Most High, Elohim, is spirit. And we must worship him in spirit and in truth. All right. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and be done for now. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next week to continue with our look at both the Torah portion and the words of the Master. Tomorrow we'll be over at the park celebrating Shavuot, having our holy convocation at the park, enjoying both fellowship with one another and the Most High in the set apart times. So until then, we'll say for now, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.